Jenny here with Sipping Streams Tea Company, and today I am featuring our 1,000-mile tea. This is one of our another Alaskan themed teas that we have created. We are the official tea sponsor of the Yukon Quest International Dog Sled Race, and that dog sled race is about 1,000 miles. It goes from Fairbanks, Alaska to Whitehorse, Canada every year and switches the start line. So they do actually cross the border. It's the only international dog sled race in the world. We love to sponsor local and be involved with our local community, and since the Yukon Quest is a really big deal around here, we decided one year to approach them and say, hey, we would love to make you some tea. What would you like? And their response immediately was, it needs to be caffeinated. It has to be really, really strong, because they need to stay up for days and days and days. We formulated this blend knowing that most of the mushers and dog handlers probably weren't tea drinkers. There is a coffee sponsor, and so they're used to drinking coffee. So we needed to come up with something that was essentially foolproof, that if the mushers threw it in their thermos, their 14-cup thermos, that if they didn't open it for 3 hours later down the trail, that when they open it up to take a sip, it wasn't overly bitter or tasted terrible. It had to be essentially foolproof, and it had to be really easy to make. Throw it in, put some hot water in it, and go for everyone, because it's a race. Nobody has time to make tea. And when I had formulated this, I was making this for the mushers in mind, for the dog handlers in mind. I did not realize that it'd be so wildly popular that everybody would want to drink this year after year. The 1,000-mile tea is actually a white and black tea blend. Most people think white tea has less caffeine than black teas, but it's actually a myth. It all depends on when that tea is harvested, its elevation, its soil conditions, the time of year, the part of the plant, everything like that. And if you are not intimately knowledgeable about where your tea actually comes from when it's picked, you're not going to know the true amount of caffeine that is in that. And I guess you wouldn't really know unless you had it lab tested. So I formulated these teas knowing about the history of these tea plants and when they're plucked, and also knowing about their taste qualities too. So that's how I chose these white teas, because our white teas actually have way more caffeine than most of our black teas do. But we also wanted to use white tea so it'd be sweet and you wouldn't have to add anything to it. Today I'm making a 1,000-mile tea. It is the official tea of the Yukon Quest 1,000-mile dog sled race. It is at all the checkpoints, the dog drops, the vet checks, the headquarters, and this past year we even made a tea stash just for the dog handlers, because they would travel from checkpoint to checkpoint. So you think the mushers don't sleep, the dog handlers who have to receive the dogs, help the mushers out, feed the dogs, check on them, make sure every animal is okay along the race, is also exhausted. So I'm making this in my tea control teapot. It's got an infuser inside it, and I pour the tea leaves in there, and it's got a little paddle that when it's done, you'll just turn it and it kind of swings along and squishes the tea leaves all into one section. So it steeps the tea. It stays hot for almost an hour just on its own because of its design. And it's made out of borosilicate glass, which is even safe to put on the stove. The box says it's safe to be put on the stove, and so I tested it. I put on my safety glasses and see if it would boil water on the stove, and sure enough it does. And as long as you don't put it on something cold and shock the glass, it is okay. Just put it on a hot pad after you're done. And yes, the glass is very hot, that you can use it over and over again. This is a very thick borosilicate glass, and borosilicate glass is the same type of glass that Pyrex is made out of. Anyway, this tea is so nice because you actually don't need to add anything to it. You don't need to add any milk or sugar. It just tastes good on its own. It actually has 4 different teas in it, and it is formulated to be sweet on its own and not too bitter. It has 3 pretty high-end expensive teas in it, so that's also why it's expensive. But the nice thing about it is expensive in tea terms is still only about 25 cents a cup of tea, because you can re-steep your tea leaves up to 4 times. So you would just open this back up, take the paddle out, pour more hot water in there, or heat up on stove and let your tea steep again. And this is definitely a tea that is very unique for Alaska. For after 6 years of making this, year after year, people love it. And I make sure to ask the mushers and the dog handlers, if you don't want it, I don't want to make it anymore because I don't want to waste good tea. But even this last winner of the Yukon Quest dog sled race, Matt Hall, one of his dog handlers said, thank you so much for sponsoring this drink, because out of all the terrible food he eats during the race, which I didn't know they ate terrible food, apparently he packs a bunch of honey buns and all sorts of, like, not Twinkies, but other types of food like that in his sled when he races, and he actually won the race. But he doesn't drink energy drinks because he drinks the 1,000-mile tea. It actually has a lot of caffeine in it, and he doesn't have to add any sugar to it. So while he's eating all of his honey buns, he doesn't have to have sugar in his tea. So the 1,000-mile tea is a very unique Alaskan tea blend that was created and formulated for people who have to endure long hours, tough terrains, really cold conditions, and is great for anybody else who loves and enjoys tea. If you're not a tea drinker, you might just want to give it a try because you might be surprised how much you enjoy this. So thank you so much for joining me today. And I am Jenny. I'm the owner of Sipping the Streams Tea Company.